I think again that's going to be nuanced case by case, depending on how, if we're looking at Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, the success of the revolution, and there aren't, issues where those users are being prosecuted now. But if we're looking at Syria, there's a, huge crackdown on those who are using social media, and that is in many ways, silencing. It's a silencing effect, because now that the government is able to react to the medium and they are finding ways to reappropriate it, that's, creating, people are going to have to find new ways to go about continuing this revolutionary, discussion. So I think it depends on how the governments are reacting and how the success of the people have been, and how that's playing out in all media forms. For example, we're not hearing so much about Syria anymore. It's kind of, we hear little bits on the news, but then again we don't, and we have to ask, to what extent are other mediums playing a part, like the traditional telecommunications, mass mediums that are affecting, to what extent are we hearing about the revolution in different forms?
What I was trying to get at is a sort of post-immediate revolutionary context. For example, discussion about the future of the revolution or the political evolution of the system in Egypt. How has that changed? Is that still taking place substantially using various forms of social media, or has it returned to more traditional venues? Or in Turkey, have you seen some change in how is the discourse surrounding democratization issues of one kind or another? How is the content of that conversation evolved?
Okay. I won't be able to speak to Egypt right now. I'm not really focused on what's going on the ground now. I haven't done any research on that. But I do think what's interesting, which we've been hearing about what's going on in Turkey, is this use of Article 301 and the imprisonment of journalists and intellectuals. Not necessarily based on social media, but it is going at this idea of having a critical, rational discourse that is allowed and permitted. And I think with that issue, you really have to look at this Article 301 and to what extent it's being used for investigative journalists and journalists that aren't necessarily just focused on new media. I think that's currently a big debate that's going on in Turkey right now.
You talked about governments reappropriating the role. They're also participating in this. I was just this morning on Twitter following this Kader Adnan case in Israel. I don't know the latest news, but I think they reached a deal, and it became really well publicized through social media, and it seems to, yes, Hunger Striker, if you're not familiar, in Israel, he's been in detention for 9 months, I believe, and he's been on hunger strike 65 days, and now he's been released. But Israel also uses social media very, very effectively as well. So it kind of goes both ways. And I remember discussions a couple of years back how the U.S. government thought about shutting down sort of certain websites that were advocating for Al-Qaeda and all that, but they opted not to, so that they could actually have something to follow. So different governments have different kind of attitudes towards this, and they may want to, shut it down or ban it, but they may also benefit from it in different ways, in a quite complex manner as well. They may fund some of projects on social media as well. So maybe you can think about that interplay, like the question of why was it there are laws on the books in Turkey that you could use to keep doing this on YouTube and others, but how the political context that causes that ban, and then the retraction, how does that play out? Maybe you can think about those issues as well and integrate it into your research. Thank you. Address
Yeah, I think that basically on the other side of new media, you have this amazing low-cost barrier to entry PR mechanism, right? And if this is now the new communication tool that people are using to communicate, then of course we're going to see hegemonic forces in a society also using this tool, and twittering and creating fan followings and getting their message out on this medium as well. And I think the fact that its popularity does trump the idea that it can be controlled in some spaces. So I would like to kind of apply this idea of YouTube and social media also being looked at from a PR standpoint, and kind of looking at that use of the counter-revolution. I think that would be a great entity to add to my research. So thank you guys.
If there are no more questions, I'll close it for today, and thank you very much for joining us. Thanks.